What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Van Chats on the Out of Collective Network. My name is John Kroom, and I'm sitting here with Micah Rice. Micah Rice has a crazy background. Like, we were just going over it before we hit the record button, and honestly, like, I don't even know where to get started, but the current events that he's running right now is SBT Gravel and the Pikes Peak Apex, which are probably one of the biggest mountain bike races. It's definitely in Colorado Springs, and then probably in the U.S. right now as far as like stage races and competitive races go. And then SBT Gravel, which is one of the biggest gravel races in the country as well. So anyways, Micah, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Good to see you, John. Thanks for having me on.
No, yeah, I'm stoked to have you on. And I've seen you in passing. I've heard your name, and it makes so much more sense how I've heard your name so many times, because when you were just giving me the breakdown all the way to you being a part of Athens Twilight, which is probably predates me even getting into cycling. But, Athens Twilight is probably one of the biggest criteriums in the country. Let's just get started with talking about who you are. Like, we never really get to see the face behind the races. And like I've had the guys from BWR on, and some guys from Lifetime. And so we've always brought these people on just so we can see the face behind the event. So let's get started with who's Micah Rice and what's the background? Like, how do you even find yourself into the sport of two wheels and cycling in general?
Yeah, no, it's I've been in the sport a long time, so it probably goes back to my days in high school when I met this guy who was he was a bike messenger in New York, and he rode a fixed gear, no brakes, track bike running around New York City delivering packages, and I was just like, that is the coolest thing ever. And I was an impressionable teenager at the time, so I decided I needed to get a bike. So rode a little bit, had fun kind of my later high school years. And I started going to University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and hooked up with the cycling club there. So actually kind of my start in cycling was collegiate racing. Raced a number of years there at University of Georgia. I graduated with a degree to teach high school English, interestingly enough.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I figured I'd be an English teacher. But then I graduated from college and I was just like, man, this bike racing thing's pretty fun. I can teach from 40, right? So let's, I think a lot of us probably get to that point at some point where we're like, I'm going to take a shot at this and see what I can do. So
it's funny because there's so many bike racers. I was having this conversation with my wife the other day. My wife just got into marketing. She's a teacher as well. And she's like, I have no experience. And I'm like, I want to be like 98% of the people I feel like in marketing don't have experience, and all their experience is just from learning and hustling. Like, it's insane to me. So, but you just kind of have to chomp at the bit for sure.
Fake it till you make it. Is what it is. Right? Just kind of jump in. And
it's either gonna work. It's either gonna work or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, you can figure something else out. Maybe you can be a doctor. You can fake that until you make it too.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. I'm sure that's gonna be just smooth cruising straight through.
But so you said you were just gonna give it a shot.
Yeah, I just decided I'm gonna try to race bikes, and so I took a part-time job working on the Athens Twilight Criterium, which you mentioned. I was in Athens. It was the first bike race I ever saw. So when I was 13 years old, I went and saw the Athens Twilight Criterium. And anyone that knows something and has actually been to the Athens Twilight Criterium understands. I mean, it's unreal, and it is a beast unto itself.
And when's the last time you've been to Athens?
Well, I've been to Athens. I've like zipped over there and done some group rides and stuff.
Yeah, but when's the last
Twilight? It's been 12 years since I've been to Twilight.
And the reason why I asked that is because, like, and we'll dive into this in a little bit, because I'm curious to pick your brain on this, especially now knowing that you've been a part of the crit scene, you've been a part of this event managing scene. But dude, you were a part of the crit stuff, like when Jeff Pierce lapped the field.
I was there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? And so like,
to
me, like, it's wild to me, like Novant Health, like, you probably know Thad Fisher, like, if you're
know
from that area.
Well.
So like Novant Health, that was like a $45,000 prize purse, and they're like coming out with the whole Lions Den, the Legion crit, and people are like, oh, this is the biggest money crit that's ever existed. And then you have like, Thad Fisher. This is why we do these podcasts, by the way, is to bring these people on to say, like, these are the people behind the scenes, before there was actually like YouTube media. Like, this guy put on like a $50,000 crit. And so I'm curious, and I was hoping that you had been there in the last 5 years. I'm wondering because the crowds are insane. There's nothing that matches an Athens Twilight, at least on the East Coast. There's nothing that matches an Athens Twilight anywhere else. So yeah, but anyways, diving into that. So sorry to go off the rocker on that.
No, that's good. See, I saw that race in first year in 1986. And I was 13 years old. And I was like, man, I want to do that. That is so awesome. And so it took me 10 years. But in 1996, I lined up on the line in the pro race. So it took me 10 years to see it and then get to the
and was it still like 5-10 people, like just deep, like rows of people?
It was just nuts. 30,000 people. Yeah. I mean, it was the heyday. The 90s of the Twilight was the heyday of and when I started really racing, it was the Saturn and Mercury trains. It was driving the whole thing, and we were just hanging on for dear life to pick up the scraps at that point. But I found a part-time job kind of working on that criterium, and I raced for a UCI team sponsored by Zaxby's Chicken Fingers.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar.
2001, those 2 years.
Which, if you don't know what Zaxby's is, because we're East Coast guys. I'm South Carolina. You're Georgia. We know Zaxby's. It's way better Raisin Canes.
Right.
I might get shunned for that, but to me, I think it's so much better.
Yeah.
And so it's so much better than Raisin. It serves the same thing, except they'll roll your chicken tenders for you.
Well, and they have salads.
Yeah, and salads.
So because they don't have that at Cane's.
It can be somewhat healthier, but
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So you raced for UCI Pro Team.
So then I kind of did that for 2 years and kind of came to the conclusion that I was good, but I wasn't great. Yeah. And I don't have to tell you this, John, to really make it as a real athlete that's going to get paid. You have to be great. You can't just be good.
Yeah.
So I decided if I was going to stay in the sport, I needed to do something slightly different. So that's when I got this brilliant idea that I was very sure that I could do a better job at running a UCI pro team than the one I was just on.
Yeah.
Youthful ignorance, let's call it.
Well, that's funny because I literally did the same thing, and we'll just dive into that.
Well, there you go. So then I jumped in, and I started my own UCI men's team, which was the Jittery Joe's cycling team.
Okay.
And Jittery Joe's is a kind of a local coffee roaster based in Athens. They've got a bunch of cafes around the southeast. And
I remember Jeff Hopkins.
Yep, Jeff Hopkins was on the team. He joined us in year 2, I think in 2003. But we had some great riders on that team. Even some riders that are relevant today. Jeff Kabush was on that team for a while. Tim Johnson was on that team for a while.
Was Phil Guyman a part of that?
No, Phil was.
No, that was Kenda. That's a 5-hour. I'm starting to get it all mixed together.
No, but it's funny you say that because Phil was a Georgia guy, and he wanted so bad to be on that team. And in fact, in his first book, I was in his first book. I made it into his first book as a mention of, the pro team director who
you were the asshole director.
I wasn't good enough.
You were the villain of Phil Guyman's.
He didn't name me, but I remember he was like took a page and a half to just smack me around a little bit.
I just hope I get your resume one day. Like you're just like, you send me a resume and I'm looking down and it's like I was in Phil Guyman's book, unmentioned.
I know, there you go. But Phil and I obviously are good friends.
Yeah.
We text back and forth on stuff. But we had a lot of pretty well-known riders. And then in the last 3 years of that 7 years running that team, I also had a women's team sponsored by Aaron's Corporate Furnishings, and my women's team was actually better than my men's team in terms of results. So we were domestic, professional teams for. I spent 7 years working on those, and then we kind of hit 2008, and that's a little bit of a recession there in 2008. So a lot of brands were kind of pulling back sponsorships at that time, and so I kind of decided it didn't make a lot of sense to keep doing this. I could maybe make it work, combine the teams. Maybe I didn't have a good thing, but that's kind of when USA Cycling came and knocking on my door. They were looking for a new national events director. So what they saw was they saw my background as a racer, my background, helping run the Twilight Criterium, 7 years running teams, have been to a lot of events. And they were kind of looking to rebrand the national championship events. And so in 2009, I moved my whole family to Colorado Springs and kind of took the reins running the national events department for USA Cycling.
Yeah.
So, and then so all of a sudden, I'm overseeing a team that oversees 17 national championships a year, organizing the calendars. I spent, it's a whole nother story. We won't get into it, but I was the race director for the 2012 Cyclocross World Championships in Louisville, and oversaw that whole thing, with lots of help, obviously. But that was quite an experience, kind of thrown into that. Obviously helping out with Olympic trials, with BMX. I knew road pretty well. I knew mountain bike a little bit. Didn't know track very well. Didn't know cyclocross very well. Had no idea on BMX. So that was a huge
BMX, and just to like kind of clear some things up, BMX, is that kind of like, isn't that their own organization and we just satellite them for the Olympics?
People did. Not a lot of people understand that. So USA BMX, while they kind of bill themselves as an MGB, they're not. They're actually an event promoting company. They kind of own and operate all of these tracks all over the country, and they're basically race event organizers. The national governing body for BMX is USA Cycling.
Yeah.
So we worked very closely with USA BMX and have good relations. But they're really an event promotion company. And then we still had to, work back and forth with the UCI and work on Olympic trials. And, we would pay them to run some of these big events, but they were not the national governing body, and still to
wow. And so that's interesting, because it always, because people are always really quick to be like, oh, USA BMX obviously has it dialed.
They do. And they do.
It's actually insane. Like, I think it's like, if you pay for a license, like it's like free racing for the year. Like, it's like you buy the license and that's your entry fees. And
some of that's true on your local tracks, but when you start doing the BMX nationals, you do pay the entry
for
fee
sure.
Yeah. Big ones, but I mean, they'll plow just thousands of people through those gates, in a
which
day.
Is insane. But I mean,
they're dropping gates every 10 seconds. 8 at a time, and they just do that all day. It's nuts.
But it's probably a little different than trying to close down a 4-corner crit in a downtown city.
No,
when you're trying to do.
It's much more like a velodrome. It's all enclosed. It's all
but even velodrome, man. I mean, like, frick, it's $100. Just to, I mean, in T-Town this past UCI block, it was $100 a day to race, and it's like, it's insane.
Yep.
Well, $300 to UCI license. It's just all this stuff,
It's different when you got thousands of people racing each day. You don't have to charge as much, and you still make a buttload of money.
For sure. But the same could be said. You have 1,000 people racing every day, because it doesn't cost. You know what I mean? It costs like if you're, for example, if you're going to a brewery, there's a select group of people that are going to come to a brewery. If you're selling dollar Miller High Lifes or dollar Coors, you're going to have a select clientele and a way more people showing up. Yeah. It's just like Starbucks, man. Starbucks has a line out the door. You walk into a Switchback where the coffee's $5 or whatever. Switchback is a coffee place here in the Springs, but you get where I'm getting at with this. But it's interesting. So, anyways,
pro forma for sure.
So you're VP. So were you VP of events, or you came as the national event director, or were you right away, or how did that work?
I started out as national event director and kind of slowly moved up within the organization. And the last several years, I was VP of national events, which would put me kind of as a senior executive at USA Cycling, which gave me kind of a little bit more decision-making process within the whole company at that point.
Yeah.
And that was great. I learned so much and made so many contacts, but eventually I decided I need to move on. I mean, eight years at the national governing body is a pretty good pull.
Yeah.
It's a pretty stressful job. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's tough to work for the national governing body. It's kind of like working like a staff at the White House or something. I mean, just everyone's just coming at you with everything, and
it's always your fault too, right?
It's always your fault. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's like everyone kind of has their own vision on what USA Cycling should be doing.
Yeah. No, I had this conversation. It's funny you mentioned that. I had this conversation with Jim Miller the other day. It's like,
right.
Everybody wants to complain about something, but they don't want to come and help. And honestly, I do think that's true. It's funny to me, like, how people, with bike racing, people get pissed that there's no racing, and then they don't come to the race when there's no racing. And then people are like, well, we can't keep these racings going. And then everybody's upset. And that's Rock Hill. The city of Rock Hill is dealing with that right now with their velodrome. But yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, no, for sure. Rock Hill made a big investment in their velodrome and their BMX track.
Well, their BMX is killing it.
At least that's going good. Mike King does a good job out there.
Yeah, he's the man.
But yeah, it's hard. Velodromes are hard. I remember a lot of people coming to me asking, what can we do? What do we need to do to get a velodrome in? And I just said, listen, do you need to take a hard look at why you're doing it? Because
was that your job? I thought your job was just
sometimes.
More or less. Sometimes. Oh, okay. So
sometimes
not only were you like putting national events on, but you were also helping people figure out where to put these venues.
We would do a lot of support to race directors who are running national level events. So whether that be UCI road events that maybe Medalist Sports were putting on, whether those be UCI level mountain bike races like Scott Tedrow out in California would put on, people like that. Thad, obviously, we're working with Thad on a number of things, including, some racing on that velodrome and things like that. So we get a lot of cities and people like asking, hey, how do we get this done? How do we do it? And it's there is very little return in the end. People think if you build a velodrome, then all of a sudden they're just going to get thousands of people coming to ride on it, from out of town and spending.
Build it and they will come.
And it's like, oh man, if you want to, there's very few velodromes that have truly seen a return and have been able to stay above water without, some local funding from an organization that doesn't care about the return. Look at T-Town, something like that. Like that's worked. They put a lot of time and effort into, a lot of local programming as well that, some money is picked up and they've got a good sponsor that, they've been able to kind of keep that going. But it's not easy to get a return on a velodrome. It's very
I think where they're gaining their return is one of two things. You have it in the middle of bumfuck. It's just like in the middle of nowhere, man. And so it's just where else are you going to go? Man, there was people that the same people that were probably yelling at me on the road would come and cheer for me on Friday night because they're just so pumped about bike racing and they loved bike racing. But what I'm getting at is, but on top of that too, is they would fly people in from all over the world. Like some of the world champions, some of the best bike racers in the world. Like you start, like, for example, like, you start looking at Athens Twilight. The reason why Athens Twilight would get so deep is not only because the frat guys and sorority girls would make a party of it because it's in the heart of Athens, where it's University of Georgia, is you would have the best bike racers in the country, if not the world, come.
And they figured out the spectator piece on that, right? Yeah. How many velodromes have truly figured out the spectator piece?
Yeah.
It's tough.
And then, I think it's like and you will know the answer to this, so correct me if I'm wrong. But isn't that where Athens is? Don't they have like the most bars per? You know this answer. You know where I'm getting at.
Most bars per capita.
Yeah, it's like, and so
it's true.
It's literally one big party, man.
It is a massive party. All the bars get to kind of fence off and extend into the road in the parking spaces in front of them. So they make it's like choose your bar and you can sit there all night and just drink and scream as people roll through.
And literally, because like the next day, I don't know if they did this back like when you were racing or running it, because it used to like Athens used to be a standalone, but then I think Thad kind of came in and helped kind of bring Gene and all those guys in and put it into Speed Week. And
it was Gene actually did that. Gene Dixon actually organized that piece.
Yeah.
And he built something with USA Crits that I actually thought was pretty good in terms of something that was truly built by the private sector.
Yeah, but back then, like, did they have a race the next day, or was it like Athens and over?
It went back and forth. Sometimes there was the Twilight would move to another venue for a mountain bike event. We did that a few Sundays. Sometimes it would go into Atlanta and we'd run, an event in Atlanta on Sunday. But all these teams were so wiped because you race until like 10:30 at night.
Well, that's what I was about to say. We would wake up at like 7:30 in the morning, and people were just leaving the bars. And we're on the way to Commerce because we have to race at noon because it's a Sunday crit.
But there was a while where, like Speed Week, and Speed Week still happens. And so we would race in like Spartanburg and Greenville. And then there was a couple more spots in Georgia, and people would come in for a whole week, and it would kind of culminate with that Saturday night race for the men and women in downtown Athens. And often that would be it. Often that would be the end of the week because everyone would stay up till like 2:00 drinking anyway. So it was kind of the end of that time.
Yeah, no, it was wild. So I guess, so we find you as like, the VP of, working with USA Cycling, this stuff. It is a hard job. I mean, anybody that works at USA Cycling, I've even given these guys hard times, but when I went out and started my own UCI team, I was coming off of working with USA Cycling, and I had to work 10 people's jobs that everybody, I would always be like, what does that guy do? And I quickly figured out what that guy did when I started my own team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you leave there, you do hot route? Is that how it works, or?
Yeah, I went to work for Oat Route, and Oat Route was very interested at that time to come into North America and start building up events. They were kind of in expansion mode, and that's a whole probably an hour podcast on its own on how all that went down. So just to give you the brief version. The organization that oversaw them at that point, OC Sport, and the organization that owned OC Sport, which is a larger conglomerate out of Europe, they were interested in expanding into as many countries and cities as possible. So we built 3 or 4 Oat Routes right out of the gate. They had done Oat Route Rockies, which was a 7-day event. And Oat Route, just for all of you that probably hadn't heard that, is it's based it was based in Europe, and the idea was to do 1 week and basically pluck the hardest week out of the Tour de France and let amateur riders ride it as a 7-day Grand Fondo.
Wow.
So they would basically say, okay, full Tour de France level kind of climbing, and we're just going to kind of take 7 days in the Alps, Oat Route Alps. And it was super difficult riding every day, just back to back to back. Some of you might remember the name Oat Route from the movie Icarus,
where
the guy decided he was going to try to dope for Oat Route to see how he did, and he didn't do very well. But he chose that event because it's really considered kind of that hardest 7 days that amateur rider can do. Yeah. And so very popular in Europe and would often fill up Oat Route Alps, Oat Route Pyrenees. They did one in the Dolomites. They wanted to expand. They went to the Rockies. And then we started building 3-day events. We did one in Asheville. We did one in San Francisco. And then we did kind of a smaller version of one in Cedar City, Utah as well that year. And so my job was to start kind of build a headquarters in the U.S. and start working on Oat Route events in the U.S. We also bought the Grand Fondo National Championships as well. So we had that as kind of 1-day events. And so we're building that portfolio. In the end, the larger group got cold feet. They wound up pulled back. I saw kind of what was happening. They really wanted to try to do business as usual in the United States the same way they had been doing it in Europe. And we all know European bike racing does not equate to American bike racing extremely well. So I finished out my contract with them, but decided to move on to something different. And so I left after about 1.5 years approximately, which was my contract. So I finished that out the end of December in 2018. And then in 2019, kind of started working on projects on my own, and with a sports tourism consulting group called Sports Strategies. I started working for them. So I did a lot of consulting with cities on events and sports tourism assets. That's when the Pikes Peak Apex actually started to come around. A group of business people here in Colorado Springs decided they wanted to kind of do a large scale mountain bike event. Originally, they thought they wanted to actually partner with Ironman to build that. Ironman in the end kind of turned down that proposal. And so I was asked to kind of come in and work with Sports Strategies to build the Pikes Peak Apex. And so that's what we started working on at the end of 2019. And it was great. We did a great announcement in November of 2019. We had already brought RockShox aboard as our presenting sponsor before the announcement. And it was going really well. And then we kind of know what happened in March of 2020, where it started getting a little rough for events. But I was pretty psyched though that we actually pulled off an event in 2020. So a lot of events just canceled. We kind of pushed through. We were one of the very few mountain bike events that the pros even had to race. We put out a $25,000 prize list, and the pros showed because there was nothing else to race. So that's kind of how the start of the Apex went, which was a pretty tough first year.
Yeah, no, and to still have a $25,000 prize purse in COVID, and not having sponsors pool. It's not like everybody had a pandemic clause. I remember in the beginning of COVID, people were like, "Oh, you didn't have a pandemic clause in certain events," and you're just like, "What? Yeah, pandemic clause?" But supposedly, those are things. That's a thing in certain contracts.
People had them. We worked really close with all of our sponsors. Honestly, I can tell you for a fact that SRAM and RockShox, they really kind of went silent on us for a while. And they canceled every single event sponsorship they had that year except ours.
Wow.
They decided
shout out SRAM.
They were really taking a hard look at all of these events, but they decided we had it, and we knew that we had support from the city. They knew that we had riders coming. None of our sponsors dropped out, not one. We kept every single sponsor we had at that time, and we had some good ones. We had Asos, we had Subaru through Huberger, still have them. RockShox just resigned for another couple of years. So we've had some very good sponsors that have taken really good care of us.
Yeah. And so and I guess, I think the big thing is with the sponsors was mainly just because, it was a weird time because people were also trying to, there was a precedent around going to events. If you went to an event, you were almost seen as kind of what are you doing, man? You're just
there's some shaming involved for sure.
Yeah. And so even keeping events on was almost a shame. But I think you guys kind of hit the luck of the draw being closer towards the end of
we had some time. We had a 25-page document on COVID protocol that we built. And when we built it in conjunction with Dr. Michael Rashan, who's also the chief medical officer for USA Cycling at that time, and a lot of information that we got from other groups. And we had a protocol of taking temperatures every morning, small group waves, masks until you got to the start line. Looking back on it, we were probably being overly cautious. Know what we know about COVID in the outdoor air, but
you had to be you had to be. You couldn't.
Part of it was perception, right? It wasn't just reality of the virus. It was perception on how many steps you were taking to be careful. And those are the things that is that 25-page document with super tight protocol. The first stage we did as a time trial. We could separate all out, keep everybody 6 feet away from each other, start every 30 seconds. That was stage one. And we ran a mountain bike time trial on stage one, which we weren't planning on doing. But now everyone got through that and there was like, that was awesome. So we're keeping it. Now we're always going to do a mountain bike time trial to start with, because we got, it was just kind of like one of those happy mistakes that people ended up really loving the format. But it was, and I ended up sharing that 25-page document with all kinds of organizations, honestly, around the world. I had a guy from Japan ask me for that.
Wow.
And, so we were kind of leaders in that piece of really kind of putting on paper in a document how to run. I had triathlons, use it. I had races all around the country use it. So we really worked hard to put on a bike race in 2020. And so we were pretty happy to do it.
No, and that's awesome, man. And then that happens. And so you find yourself also working SBT. We had, Mark was a good friend of mine, and unfortunately he passed away. Was a race director, and, he was running that event. We had him on this podcast. So that was a big blow and a big loss, and big shoes to fill. And so then you come through to SBT. When did you start working over there?
So exactly right. Just kind of a timeline. I mean, Mark passed away in the summer of 2020, and I had actually heard such good things about the first year of the event in 2019. Heard it was just an extremely good event. So when Mark passed away, then also Amy Charity, there was a third owner as well, and Amy Charity bought out that third owner.
Yeah.
And so Amy kind of ended up with that, kind of majority piece and kind of the controlling interest in that event, and then opened up registration for that event in December of 2020 for the 2021 race, and sold out the 3,000 spots in 9 minutes.
Insane.
And immediately was like, holy cow. Now I got in about minute 5 and got myself a spot. Because I'd heard such good things. I was like, well, the best way to go check out an event and how it runs. I'm always, I realize I've been running events for a long time, but I'm always in learning mode. Right.
Well, I think that's what makes
something.
People good at their jobs, right? Like you're constantly following the times, you're constantly learning. If you stay in your ways and you stay in this, it's just like bike racing. Back then for bike racing for you realized that you weren't good enough, I guess, or you didn't have the results. Nowadays, man, you don't have to be good enough. You're not. If you can take a video, you can shock yourself how long you can stay within this sport. But anyways, yeah. So you go try out the event.
No, I was like, so I got a spot and I was excited. So I didn't know Amy very well, but I knew her a little bit from the USA cycling days. She had been on Team USA and raced overseas a little bit for one of Jim's programs. And so I just sent her an email. I just said, hey, I've heard such great things about your event. I'm excited. I got a spot. This is in January, and I said, I'm excited. I'll see you in August. Looking forward to checking it out. Let me know if I can be of assistance with anything. And she immediately emailed me back and said, yes, can you get on the phone as soon as possible? I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So we talked the next day, and she basically said, well, I just sold this event out in 9 minutes, and I just bought out my partner who had been in charge of operations. I need a race director. So
was your first duty as a race director? What do you do in this point? Do you refund yourself, or do you can't take money away?
That's an ongoing joke. I never got a refund. But what I do in the system is I keep rolling myself over as a deferral.
Yeah, in case you get the boot, so come back.
Soon as I get the boot, I have a number waiting for me, whatever year that is, that I can go actually race the event, which I originally planned on doing.
So wait, repeat that. So you literally sign up for the event and you shot him. Did you just shoot a message to Amy on LinkedIn?
A random email to her Gmail account?
to her Gmail. And so you're just like,
Yeah.
hey, congrats. And then
I was like, this is awesome. I'm excited. I've heard such good things, and
boom.
let me know if I can help anything.
All right. So you guys jump on the phone. What happens? How does this
Well,
conversation goes?
well, I think that what she appreciated was just my events background. Obviously, I'd run a lot of high level events in my past.
One of the best in the U.S. I mean, you literally ran it for the governing body. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then second of all, I'd just been through this whole COVID protocol thing and helped build that COVID protocol plan. And January. I mean, the COVID vaccine had just come out, or was just about to come out.
But
January of 2021,
which is funny that we're talking about that. But I think when it came out, though, like, it was select few. It wasn't our cream of the crop that was getting that
months. Yeah, I mean, but people were still canceling events. People were still worried about that. And Amy was like, I am running this event in August. Yeah. And she wanted somebody that had already run an event in COVID. And so that was the kind of probably what she liked the most. And she just said, hey, let's do this. And I had lost some of kind of that, working for Sports Strategies and doing a lot of that sports tourism consulting, had a lot of budget slashed by cities and by, CVBs and DMOs that were kind of, doing that, needing that consulting. So I had some time to fill and some income to fill. So it worked out really good in time for timing with me at that point. And so I jumped in in January, and then we, went straight into August of 2021, which is the first time, the second edition of the in-person event. And then my first year running it.
Wow, man. And so yeah. And was it your idea to move it to a lottery? Because SBT is a lottery now, right? Because of how quick it was selling out.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really my decision. It was Amy's decision in the end, but I was, we discussed it as a group and decided that was the way to go. That was what, Unbound and some of these other larger events were doing. But yeah, we turned at least 2,000 people away this year.
Yeah.
That did not get a spot. And so we'll end up again with about 3,000 on the line for that event, which is a lot. I mean,
what's the most people? Because I mean, you've ran an event in probably every discipline except e-bike, right? Or have you ran an e-bike event?
I don't think I've run an e-bike event. Now, SBT has an e-bike category, but
all right, there you go.
So last year I got that under my belt. Yeah, I've pretty much run an event in every discipline. I think that's fair to say.
And so now that we're saying that,
freestyle BMX,
BMX,
I was just leaving as that was coming on board.
I was about to say that's pretty new. But what, like, is gravel something like you've never seen before then?
No, absolutely. I mean, I was pretty well versed after 8 years at USA Cycling. I was pretty well versed in the 5 disciplines. So you've got 4 Olympic disciplines plus cyclocross. And I knew I was pretty comfortable with all of those by that time. But gravel was like a 6th discipline for me.
Yeah.
And which is partly why I wanted to check it out and why I signed up, because I wanted to a little understand. And I think, a lot of the operations elements are very much like road cycling, right? Yeah. I mean, if you really want to strip it down from an operation standpoint, it's a road race on dirt roads. I mean, but there's just all these little things that are different. Like the roads are open, when you're running a road race, you've got a peloton that you protect.
Moto officials.
Yeah. You've got, you're, on a larger scale one, sometimes you have the yellow line rule, but on a larger road race, you've got the peloton that can use the entire road. You're pulling, you are rolling down this road in a bubble that is protected by a caravan. Now that's not true at all in gravel racing. Obviously the speeds of vehicles are much fewer, and there's, many fewer vehicles on the road. But that was one of the things that kind of boggled my mind in the beginning, was like, oh my gosh, we are racing through this with oncoming cars. Like, this is
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
And so it took me a
And
while.
they're big loops. Like, they're
Yeah.
huge, man. Like 144 miles. They're huge loops. And they're like, you're talking about from the start line just to the last aid station is like 40 or 50 miles away, right? And so like you're literally staffing people at corners all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive, massive staff and volunteer crew that takes that is out there on course on race day.
How many volunteers do you think you guys have on race day?
200.
Wow, just volunteers.
Yeah, plus staff. That's another 50.
Wow.
But not all events do that, right?
Yeah.
If you go to some of these, there's like, you're on your road for aid stations. You know, there aren't corner marshals, and a lot of these don't even, there's no signage, like nothing, right?
Dude, I would love to see the liability insurance on.
Yeah, I mean, even Unbound, you know, which I would argue is probably considered kind of the Super Bowl of gravel racing.
Yeah.
Kind of number one. They don't do much course marshaling. They don't do really any signage. It's up to you to know the course and put it on your Wahoo or whatever.
Yeah.
It's up to you to,
especially for the 350, the big one.
Yeah, it's up to you to send help to the feed area to, like, you know, they might do some neutral water, but you know, if you want food or bottles or any help with your bike, you know, you've got to supply those people on your own. Yeah. SBT is very much different. We don't allow any outside support, so we actually make it so you can start with 2 bottles and a snack in your back pocket without a computer, and you can have a great day and be fine all day, because we supply, you know, water, drink, food. We have technical support at all the aid stations. We have medical support, roving and at the aid stations. Fully signed. You're not going to miss a turn. There's tons of signage out there on where to go, when, and we don't allow people to send support to the aid stations or be in a vehicle and help out or anything. We make it so that you kind of, we're very participant focused.
I know, but I will
all that stuff.
I will say this, but because you guys have created those rules, you guys spark freaking controversy every year.
Oh, of course.
There's always some headline of this person helped this person, or this car was on the side helping this person, and
you see those things, and once in a while that happens. I mean, the whole thing that happened with Lauren last year.
Oh yeah.
You know, supposedly, like, she had, you know, men teammates like feeding her bottles all day, and which is
not technically outside help, Micah. I don't know if I disagree.
I will also argue that it's not against the rules. It was, well, like, if you never against the rules.
If you hand me a bottle, or if Lauren handed me a bottle, is that outside help?
No, it's completely legal within the rules that we've set.
And so it's kind of interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean there's always controversy. I mean, gravel is a very new sport, and the thing about gravel is that everything is different. You go to every event, and there's always something different. It's not like there's this, you know, big fat rule book, you know, that the UCI, you know, hands all the race directors so that everything is all the same. And that's kind of the beauty of gravel, but it's also like a really difficult thing that gravel is grappling with right now.
Yeah.
Is that every event that you go to, it's so different, and the vibe is different, and the rules are different. You know, like, for example, we don't allow aero bars. I had to take
mine off. I had to take mine off at the beginning of the race because I had no idea, and I got made fun of.
It's an odd rule. It's an odd rule that you know, not most gravel events just allow whatever. And
is that a safety thing or just to be different?
Yeah, no, it's a safety thing. You know, and it gets nuts out there with, you know, you're talking about waves of 1,000 people at a time.
Well, it's also a quick race. Just because you're at altitude, like you're already going a little quicker.
Yeah.
Like, I think I literally did Leadville the day before, and I was like, I'm just gonna ride today, and I just rode, and I stopped at every aid station. I still averaged 20 miles an hour, and I think it's like it's just a quick day.
Yeah, and it's unlike a lot of these races, which tend to spread out quickly. Steamboat really has kind of that, it's a front group of a few hundred, and then it's still a group of 100, and then even halfway through, you could easily have a peloton of 30 at the front.
Well, I think, and I honestly think it's just because, like, how much faster can you go? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how much faster can you go? And like, it's just because you're at such a high altitude and everybody's kind of drafting with each other. Like, it's already a fast bike race, and like Leadville is kind of the same way. It's like even on a mountain bike, like it's a fast 100-mile day on a mountain bike, just for like, especially for what the conditions are. Sure. But anyways, I don't want to keep you all morning. We're getting close to the end, and I think we could like literally talk all day about like what you do and what you've experienced. And honestly, this has been a cool experience for me, just to like get on here and talk to you about some of these things, because I'm super interested and super passionate about these things. But anyways, my last question for you, and I ask everybody this, and I wasn't going to prep you because I'm kind of interested to hear your answer. But if you could have a cup of coffee with one individual, dead or alive, who would that person be? And then how would you take your coffee? And I'll give you a few seconds. It's more or less like the reason why I just throw this on someone is because I feel like if you ever get this opportunity, like they're gonna like you have to answer quick, man. Like the higher power is just gonna be like, all right, who do you want to? You get pick your gambit,
that quickly, huh?
Yeah.
Man, I'm a guy in the sports world, so I think it would probably have to be, someone in that sports world that that interests me. Probably someone from my era. So. I'll throw out there the first thing I came up with, and that's Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan, that's a good one.
I would love to sit down. I would take my coffee. I want it brewed coffee, strong, nothing added.
Just sit down with MJ.
Just sit down and chat with Michael Jordan. I'd be really interested. I mean, that guy was a groundbreaker, and it's been obviously he's retired now and still alive, so maybe there's still a shot, right?
Yeah. No, there's always still a shot. We ran into Dennis Rodman in Orange County when we were shopping for groceries, so there's always an opportunity.
One person removed right there.
Well, there you go. Well, Micah, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. And guys, if you haven't already checked out the Pikes Peak Apex, please make sure you do so. There will be a link in the description below. It's open to everyone. They're also adding a run, which you can check out on August 9th. I also run their podcast. On August 9th, we'll be releasing something with Jamil, which is like essentially releasing the entire Pikes Peak Apex run that they have on Sunday. So literally there's an option for everyone. And so anyways, guys, make sure you go check out the Pikes Peak Apex. SBT Gravel, we'll also put a link down in the description below. There's probably still like some crazy competition that one of the brands and one of the sponsors are going to be doing. Be on the lookout for that. That's how I ended up in Unbound like 2 years ago. And it was like one of the coolest things ever. So just be on the lookout for the cool, crazy contests. Other than that, we'll see you next time, guys. Cheers.